So the purpose of this video is to share what my experience was on 9/11. I know a lot of people have different experiences and different stories. This is kind of my perspective and what was going on with me that morning.
As we've heard before, we said earlier that there was at least one speculative report that an airplane had crashed in, whether deliberately or accidentally, we don't know. And there are continuing reports from people who say that they saw an airplane. One woman saying that she saw a jet going in. So again, Don, a jet screaming that low could be consistent with what you heard?
Absolutely. It could be consistent with what I heard. What I know I did not hear was an airplane, any kind of a prop plane. And I think looking at the damage, I don't think there's any way possible that it would have been a prop plane. It's just too much damage to the building.
This is about when I came in to do some makeup work for Mr. Keel's class, and I had to be here at 7 a.m. So I got here around 6:58 our time, which was 8:58 New York time. And I walk in, and there's Mr. Keel just sitting on a desk staring at the TV, speechless.
What's deceptive about the World Trade Center is that it is so huge and so tall that the perspective is difficult to get from the ground. But when you look at the size of the hole, and if you look in context at one of the helicopters going around at a lower size, a helicopter is about the size of a regular Cessna, that kind of thing, the body of the plane. The hole is so much larger than that helicopter that it would have to, if it was a jet, I would have to speculate that it would have to be a larger than normal jet. I mean, larger than like a Citation or something like that. It's just such a gigantic hole, and it blew out the other side. And again, these buildings are almost a city block size building. So for it to have blown in this hole on the north side as well as the west side, it had to be a gigantic explosion.
Well, obviously we don't know if this was if it was a plane, and I underline if it was. We don't know if it would have been deliberate or accidental. We know so little now other than what we can see from these pictures. But the interesting point is there are a number of small airports around New York where passenger corporate jets or private jets will land and take off. And it's not uncommon, if you have ever visited the World Trade Center, when you go up to the observation platforms at the top, you can look down on airplanes that are either coming in for landings or taking off from New York airports. But all pilots who fly in this area know very well where the World Trade Center is located. All the routes are very far or comfortably far away from the two towers.
And not just private planes, too, because with some winds in some directions, even out of the big commercial airports, planes are routed quite close to New York. I've flown in from LaGuardia, even into LaGuardia, but having to go right by the World Trade Centers.
But we emphasize this is all speculative at this point. And just to reset for all of you, this is a special report from ABC News, and we are dealing, and we have to underline this, we are dealing purely in the realm of speculation here as to what may have happened at the World Trade Center. Obviously, a major incident occurred here on the upper floors of one of the World Trade Center towers. You can see multiple openings and flames coming out of at least two sides of the tower at the World Trade Center.
We just got a report that the Associated Press is now reporting that it was an aircraft. So that's one more witness weighing in, or at least one more source weighing in on the fact that it was an aircraft of some kind.
And as Don Daly reported, this occurred about 15 or 20 minutes ago in downtown New York. And New York time, that would have been about 20 minutes or 8:45. This is a time when literally tens of thousands of people are coming to work at the World Trade Center.
Looking at the top of the building, you mentioned there's an observation center, and I don't know what time it opens, but I think it opens fairly early, and people are up there at all hours of the day. Families, tourists coming in to look at the city of New York from atop it. Also there, I don't know if this is the building that has the restaurant on top of it as well, but in those high floors, there are places where tourists teem in the morning, even if the regular workers weren't in. And we remind you again that there was a terrorist bomb that did go off at the World Trade Center years ago. It was down in the garage level, but we have no
obviously
reason,
no
as we say
indication
over
that
and
this
over
could have
again,
been
to
related to
speculate
that.
in way.
Right.
Now-
Don Daler, ABC's Don Daler, who is on the scene. Don, just give me some description again of what you can see now.
What we're seeing, it appears that there is more and more fire and smoke enveloping the very top of the building. And as fire crews are descending on this area, it does not appear that there's any kind of an effort up there yet. Now remember, oh my God.
Oh my God.
That looks like a second plane.
Dear
Has
Lord.
I
just
did
hit.
not see a plane go in. That just exploded.
We just saw another plane coming in from the side.
You did. That was obscured
Yes,
by
and
my
that's
view.
the second explosion. You could see the plane come in just from the right-hand side of the screen. So this looks like it is some
Lord.
sort of a concerted effort
Deliberate.
to attack the World Trade Center that is underway in downtown New York.
The thing that gets me about this clip is that this anchor knew immediately that there was an attack on these buildings. Now, when I was watching this was the exact clip that I watched when I was a sophomore in high school when it actually happened. And when the second plane hit, we watched it happen live. We thought the first one could have been an accident, but we're sitting there watching the second one hit live, and the panic that kind of ensued, and Mr. Keel's reaction was that of tragedy, obviously. And there was another student in the room that was there to make up work also, and he didn't know what the buildings were. He didn't know what they were for, but he started blowing smoke about what they were and what he thought. And he said stuff like, oh, they're just big office buildings. There's nobody in them. There's not that many people in them. And obviously, Mr. Keel was like, you're an idiot. Basically, he didn't say that, but he basically gave him this look of, you don't know what the heck you're talking about. This is awful. And obviously he was wrong. There was thousands of people in them. And some facts about that, these buildings housed 430 different companies. 430 different companies. And during the whole day, there was up to 50,000 different employees in these buildings at once. Now, when you look at the amount of employees at the time and the casualty number, they don't match up anywhere close, luckily. And there's lots of things that attribute to that. It was early in the morning there still, and people weren't at work yet. They were still on their way to work, and lots of different things. When the first plane hit, a lot of people stopped coming to work because there was danger involved. So, and then there were, on average, 150,000 tourists that visited these buildings every day. So there were a lot of tourists there. There were a lot of employees there that got stuck in the middle of it all and didn't know what to do. You know, there's a tragedy in these buildings. There's an attack on these buildings, and what do they do?
We will see that scene again just to make sure we saw what we thought.
We're going to give you a replay of what we just saw, and I must admit I thought it was some sort of fire equipment coming in or some sort of observation plane, but it was obviously designed to attack the World Trade Center. We're going to show you that. Here's a replay of the videotape. In a second, that looks like a good-sized plane came in and hit the World Trade Center from the other side. So this is obviously, or would seem to be, and again, I'm dealing in speculation, but it would seem like there is a concerted attack against one of the towers of the World Trade Center underway. But this is the shot again. This is moments ago of this second plane coming in, and this is now in slow motion. Oh, this is terrifying, awful.
To watch powerless is a horror.
All right, we're going to go back to live coverage. Now you're looking at live pictures, and there is the second fire, which was brought about by this second plane that hit the tower. And Don, from everything I can see, it was the same tower that was hit the first time, right?
No, it's the second tower.
It's the other tower.
It is the other tower that was hit.
My mistake.
They targeted it, from what I'm seeing on the television, from your view, the two towers are in, one is in front of the other one, but it was definitely the second tower that was hit, about halfway down, not quite as high. And from my view here, it does not seem to be as big, as much damage as the original. I don't know if that means it was not as big a plane or what. I did not see the plane go in, but it's horrendous damage. But it doesn't seem to be the gaping hole through two sides of the building like on the first one.
Don, from your vantage point, can you see if there are people coming out down below?
I can't see the bottom of the base of the buildings.
Here's the president now in Florida. I wonder if everybody knows there what's going on. We'll listen to him.
Ladies and gentlemen, this is a difficult moment for America. I, unfortunately, will be going back to Washington after my remarks. Secretary of Rod Pace and Lieutenant Governor will take the podium and discuss education. I do want to thank the folks here at Booker Elementary School for their hospitality. Today, we've had a national tragedy. Two airplanes have crashed into the World Trade Center in an apparent terrorist attack on our country. I have spoken to the Vice President, to the Governor of New York, to the Director of the FBI, and have ordered that the full resources of the federal government go to help the victims and their families, and to conduct a full-scale investigation to hunt down and to find those folks who committed this act. Terrorism against our nation will not stand. And now, if you join me in a moment of silence. May God bless the victims, their families, and America. Thank you very much.
Okay, we do know, or at least the Associated Press is now reporting, that an aircraft crashed near the Pentagon, and the West Wing of the White House, as Claire Shipman told us, was evacuated amid these threats of terrorism.
Come here to National Airport to, continue our coverage of the situation in New York because the airports have been shut down. No sooner had we gotten here and stopped the car than we looked up, and there was this cloud of smoke billowing from the Pentagon. There had been a traffic accident here at National, and a number of emergency vehicles were dealing with that. Then suddenly we saw this, and I would say within a couple of minutes, they were all tearing out of here, heading toward the Pentagon. We asked folks here. One of the police officers told me that he had heard a plane had gone into the Pentagon.
So this is a story that's not necessarily mine, but it was told to me by somebody I know that it happened to them. And so the story goes that I was in college at this point. It was years later, and I was in this psychology class where there was like 120 students or something. It was a big class, and I sat dead center, like 6 or 7 rows up, right in the middle. And we had assigned seats, and every single day this guy came in, and he was late 20s, early 30s, and he had a limp, and he had a cane, and I'm like, what is going on with this guy? I wonder what the heck happened to him. And over the semester we got to know each other a little bit better, and then we eventually got paired up for a group assignment for that class. And while he and I were working on it, I finally was just like, what the heck happened to you? What's the deal with your cane and your limp, your injury? And he said, well, I was in the military, and I was in the color guard for the president. And when 9/11 happened, when the 2 planes hit, we got called to go and be the color guard for the president when he got to the Pentagon on his way back from Florida. And we were sitting across the street from the Pentagon in our bus, waiting for the president to get there. And while we're sitting there, the plane that hit the Pentagon flew over our bus and into the building. And we were all in shock for a second, and we all just pile off of the bus and run in there and try and save people. And they're pulling people out. We're pulling people out of the building and going back out and coming back in and going back out and coming back in. And I was running behind my best friend. We were running into the building, and I'm watching him run in, and part of the building collapses on him. Part of the wall that was 5 or 6 feet thick of concrete just collapsed and fell on my friend and killed him instantly. There was nothing left. And he said, I ran in and I saw it happen, and I immediately ran in there. And the adrenaline kicked in, and I tried to save my friend. I tried to save him. I tried to lift this huge concrete wall off of him. And obviously it didn't work, and my body got completely screwed up. My back got jacked up. I have permanent damage to my back, and now I can't walk right anymore. But while I was in that moment, his left hand, my friend's left hand, was still hanging out from underneath the wall. And it had his wedding ring on it. And luckily in the moment I had the mindset to take the ring and put it in my pocket and take it back to his wife and kids. Now, then right after that, I realized the injuries that I had caused on myself, and I had to go get fixed. And then I had to go, and after that, I went and recited the whole story to his wife and his children, which was awful. Now, and that's how he got injured. Now, that's a story I'm never going to forget, and that happened to somebody that I'll never forget. This was awful for a lot of people, and they all have different stories. In the Pentagon, counting the people on the plane, had 125 casualties. Now, a lot of people say, well, that's nothing compared to the 2 towers, which is true. It's not. But, I mean, to those families, it's everything.
The Federal Aviation Administration has actually gone even further than it did a few minutes ago. It was asking all planes not to take off. Now the FAA has ordered all aircraft currently in the air over the United States to land at the nearest airport. In fact, John, I just want to check one thing, because one of the very first people the President talked to was the Director of the FBI, and Pierre Thomas, who covers the Justice Department and the FBI for us, has been here. They may think they prepare for this kind of thing, Pierre, but man, it must have been a shock.
Stunning shock. The FBI Special Operations Center is now in full alert. The FBI extremely concerned that there would be additional attacks. Normally when you have a situation like this, they immediately get on the line with the CIA, the various intelligence agencies, trying to get a sense of who might have been planning something. But right now, the first order of business is to protect against a second attack, third attack. The feeling is normally when you have this kind of situation, there will be more attacks almost immediately.
Let's go to the trade tower again, because, John, we now have what do we have? We don't...
Wow. It looks like a new plume, a new large plume of smoke.
Now, it may be that something fell off the building. It may be that something has fallen. We don't know, to be perfectly honest. But that is what you're looking at, is the current. That's the scene at this moment at the World Trade Center. Dan Daler from ABC's Good Morning America is down in the general vicinity. Dan, can you tell us what has just happened?
Yes, Peter, it's Don Daler down here. I'm 4 blocks north of the World Trade Center. The second building that was hit by the plane has just completely collapsed. The entire building has just collapsed, as if a demolition team set off. When you see the old demolitions of these old buildings, it folded down on itself, and it is not there anymore.
That should be it.
It has completely collapsed.
The whole side has
The
collapsed?
whole building has collapsed.
The whole building has collapsed?
The building has collapsed.
That's the southern tower you're talking about.
Exactly. The second building that we witnessed the airplane enter had been, the top half had been fully involved in flame. It just collapsed. There is panic on the streets. Thousands of people running up Church Street, which is what I'm looking out on, trying to get away. But the entire, at least as far as I can see, the top half of the building, at least half of it, I can't see below that, half of it just started with a gigantic rumble, folded in on itself, and collapsed in a huge plume of smoke and dust.
We're talking about massive casualties here at the moment, and we have, that is extraordinary.
There is panic on the streets. There are people screaming and running from the site. The gigantic plume of smoke has reached me, and I'm probably a quarter of a mile north of there.
Peter.
Now this is what it looked like moments ago. My God. The southern tower, 10 o'clock Eastern time this morning, just collapsing on itself. This is a place where thousands of people work. We have no idea what caused this. If you wish to bring anybody who's ever watched a building being demolished on purpose knows that if you're going to do this, you have to get at the under infrastructure of a building and bring it down.
Peter?
Yes, Dan.
What appeared to happen from my vantage point, the top part of the building was totally involved in fire, and there appeared to be no effort possible to put that fire out. It looked like the top part of the building was so weakened by the fire that the weight of it collapsed the rest of the building. That's what appeared to happen. I did not see anything happening at the base of the building. It all appeared to start at the top and then just collapse the rest of the building by the sheer weight of the top. There was no explosion or anything at the base part of it, but I did see that the top part of it started to collapse. The walls started to bulge out, bricks, glass things coming out, and then it collapsed in on itself, and it appeared to just fold down from there, from the very top.
At the scene now at the World Trade Center, because of the concerns of the structural stability of the remaining tower, a temporary headquarters mobilization point triage center was set up at Stuyvesant High School, which is about 2.5 blocks up and slightly across the street. Now the concern is that if the building falls, if the second building falls, that it will be falling in that direction. So they are now evacuating their own command post and triage center, and they have to find an even further zone to move that to. Something that is striking about this today is that this is indicative of, with a car bomb at the State Department, a plane crash into the Pentagon, 2 planes designated to crash into each tower of the World Trade Center, bringing one down. It connotes the level of planning and sophistication and extreme logistical ability that probably makes this singularly the largest, most well-coordinated act of terrorism, not just in U.S. history, but probably
in modern times.
In modern times.
Yeah,
unprecedented. It's going to be.
And every time you say that, I'm going to go immediately to Washington now, but every time you say that, I keep thinking of how we are told time and time and time again by the Pentagon and by the State Department that they know something's going on in the world today.
They seem to have the problem at the North Tower, Peter.
Let's look at the North Tower quickly.
Seems to be coming down.
Oh my God.
The second tower.
It's hard to put it into words, and maybe one doesn't need to. Both trade towers, where thousands of people work, on this day, Tuesday, have now been attacked and destroyed, with thousands of people either in them or in the immediate area adjacent to them. There is simply no way to accurately describe the emotion this evokes in people all over the world, friends of the United States and enemies of the United States as well. John Miller, very briefly, you said to us just a few minutes ago that this was their concern, that they thought after the first tower went that the second one was vulnerable.
There was constant intelligence that terrorist organizations, and specifically that financed by Osama bin Laden, was trying to mount another series of attacks against the United States. Of course, they thought of the symbolic targets. The most symbolic was the World Trade Center because it had been attacked yet not brought down. And it seems that those concerns that even caused the World Trade Center to hire a senior FBI counterterrorism official just weeks ago to try and beef up security have come home to roost. It's also interesting to say that there is no type of security
which would have prevented against this today. Well, that may not, I was going to say that may not altogether be true, because security operates in waves and concentric circles out around the world. Now we've lost the picture from there, so now we have it again. Well, wherever you are in the United States or in the world today, you can, the landscape of New York City has just been changed. And one has to assume that thousands of lives have been extinguished. And it may be presumptuous to say thousands, but thousands of people work in these buildings, and given the difficulties of evacuating these buildings where, as we've said several times, the elevators may not have been operating and were not operating in at least one tower, tower number 2, the first one which is to go, that is the second attack on the southern tower, the first higher on this end of town, but both those towers have now gone. And here's a picture that doesn't exist anymore, because that's not a live picture anymore. Good Lord, it just... Now, can I ask where this picture is from? Do we know where this is? This
is outside the World Trade Center. The sign indicates the approach to the
Brooklyn Bridge. To the Brooklyn Bridge. So we're
on West Street, approximately just north of Vesey Street there.
And you can see the dust and debris. And this is at, I don't know if this is at an early stage or whether this is right now. It's at an early stage, because there in the distance you can see at least one of the towers still standing as people wander.
That newscast went on for 3 days after that, straight, without any interruptions. There's no commercials, none of that. Planes weren't flying over still. People were watching to see what recovery efforts we were able to make, to see who might have been behind all of that, all of the attacks. Somebody came in and kicked in our front door, and we wanted to know who, we wanted to know why. And so we took the efforts to take care of it. the American people after this really, they came together in a way that I've never seen before and haven't seen since. There were American flags everywhere. They were on cars, they were on houses, they were on people's shirts, their clothes. Everybody came together after this and said, we're Americans and we're not going to put up with it. The efforts of the rescue teams and all of the volunteers were obviously astronomical. The things that they did were heroic, and a lot of them paid the ultimate price for it. What my biggest takeaway from all of this, yes, it's all tragic, it's very sad, and I wanted to give some perspective to that, but the biggest thing that I took away from this is that we can come together and we can be people, we can be Americans, and we can work together. So hopefully you remember this day, remember the things that happened, and remember what came after, what we did as a country, all of the good things that we did as a country and how we came together. And you can remember to do some of that too.